Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Welcome, Bruce.
Morning, David.
So, Bruce, just a note to listeners or viewers, actually. If you see me kind of always peering down into the bottom, like to the bottom here, it's because Bruce's face is this little square at the bottom of my screen. And so I'm often looking down at him. So that's good. It's probably kind of weird because I should be looking into the camera, but maybe I'll have to train myself to do that. But it's so normal to actually look at someone you're talking to. So that's why I do that. It's not some weird, I don't know, tick. Bruce, we're going to talk today about Peter Chiarelli's summer, how he has done in the summer of 2018, which is his fourth summer?
Yep.
And the summer season, it's all about the summer season for an NHL GM. He's had some successes and some failures as the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. And we're going to go through this summer in a series of podcasts. We're going to rate Chiarelli for every summer and Todd McLellan for every winter, because they're kind of mutually responsible for those two seasons. Exclusively responsible. And so we start today with the summer of 2018. Bruce, the first major thing that Chiarelli did was sign KHL goalie Mikko Koskinen to a 1-year, $2.5 million per contract. What do you think of that? That's how he started off the summer.
Oh. Yeah, he was actually pretty active while the NHL playoffs were still ongoing. You know, he made a couple trades, but the Mikko Koskinen deal was certainly the big one. A strange one, 1-year deal, meaning that at his age, meaning that at the end of it, he will be unrestricted. So if he has a great season, I'm not sure the Oilers have any inside track on him for next season or not, but it's just strictly a 1-year gamble on the guy. What it's telling me, just based on the amount of dollars they're throwing around, after Chiarelli paid in the range of $1 million for 4 previous backup goalies, Anders Nilsson, Jonas Gustafsson, Laurent Brossoit, and Al Montoya, to suddenly up the ante to $2.5 million means he has a lot higher expectations of this guy, obviously. And just based on the two salaries, it's basically a 50-30 split, right? If they each were to make the same per start, then the starts would get split 50-30.
So, Bruce, a lot of hockey observers in recent years have talked about the NHL goalie position not being something you want to spend a ton of money on, partly because goalies are so up and down and you don't know if you're going to be spending your money on the right goalie. Mm-hmm. I don't think it has to do with the importance of the position, though. It's more like you can't predict it very well.
Yeah. And
I think there's a bit of a, I'm going to say there's a fallacy that Chiarelli bought into and a lot of GMs bought into. And it's this, that, okay, let's say you don't want to pay your top goalie $10 million a year like Carey Price got in Montreal, because you're not sure it's just a lot less safe bet than playing a forward or defenseman that amount of money, because he might go up or down. And I think that's reasonable. But so the idea is you pay your starter, in the $4, $5, $6 million range, and you don't really go above that. And then your backup, you pay $1 million. You really cheap out there. And I think that's where the NHL has been wrong. I'm saying it, Bruce. Mm-hmm. Here I am in my kitchen saying all those 31 GMs are wrong. And I'll tell you why. It's not like a fourth line forward or a third line defenseman. When they go in the lineup, they're not the most important player on the team or one of them. They only deserve that NHL minimum, because they're going to be checking in on the fourth line or the third pairing. They have minimum responsibility, minimal impact on the outcome of the game. For the goalie, though, when the backup goalie checks in, as many, and it should happen about 20 times at least a year, and sometimes it happens 30, 40 times a year. He's as important as the number one center or the number one defenseman. He is probably the most important player on the ice. So you're going to cheap out just because that only happens in a third of the games. You're going to cheap out and only pay that guy $1 million. Maybe it will be better to make 2 bets. One of them like a $4 or $5 million bet on your starter, and then another one or $2 or $3 million bet on your backup. So you have as good a backup as possible, the best backup that you can find. So I think when it comes to the idea of paying for a backup goalie, I'm on board with that. I think it's actually a really good plan, and to actually bring the salary of the starter and the backup closer together, try to get two players who are more even, and you try to make good bets on both, but you're not making the whole bet on the starter and no bet at all on the backup. You're just, because for the Oilers, it's been a disaster. Plan A was to do that with Chiarelli, to pay for backups like Goose Gustafsson and Laurent Brossoit and now Montoya. They haven't performed. Talbot played too much. He got injured, partly because of way too much, partly got injured because of that, because they had no one. So I think Chiarelli actually realized a mistake that he had made and decided, okay, I'm not going to do that. And he said that in his year-end press conference, that he was going to pursue a goalie, and that was actually one of the top priorities. And I was really actually encouraged to hear that, because I think he's right. The question is, did he make the right kind of bet on the right player or not, or on the wrong player? And that's where I have real questions about this signing. What do you think about, let's say, I don't know if you agree with me or not, that this kind of bet is a good idea, but you can address that. But what I'm asking is, like, was this player the right player to bet on for this amount of money?
Well, yeah, that is the huge question. Is this the player? Did he bet on the right guy? I agree in principle that if you're paying your backup goalie $2.5 million and he plays like a $2.5 million goalie, then it's worth it. I mean, even if you put their two salaries together, David, the two goalies combined are hitting about 8.4% of the salary cap, which is less than 2/23, which is basically what your roster position would require. And of course, if you're going by who's on the ice at any given time, the goalies, one or the other of the goalies, are 1/6 of your manpower, right? They're huge. And as you say, it's not like you can spot in the backup goalie that he's only going to play the other team's third and fourth lines, or he's only going to play shifts when the puck starts in the other end of the ice. There's none of that. He plays the whole game, and he is, as you say, the number one goalie for that game. And the Oilers have, it's partly Chiarelli, it's partly McLellan. It's hard to say where the twain don't meet, but when the coach doesn't have trust in the backup goalie, as McLellan clearly really hasn't the last 2 years, playing Talbot 140 starts, and I mean last year, David, he missed 8 games to injury. And as soon as he came back off the injured list, he got started 17 games in a row. I mean, to me, that's insane.
And this was after they paid a fifth round pick for Montoya, plus another year on his contract at $1 million that they still have to deal with this year.
Mm-hmm. Well, they did part way through those 17 games because Brossoit got nailed to the bench immediately upon Talbot's return and never played a minute. And then maybe 9 or 10 games into the 17, they went out and got Montoya, and he came in on relief his very first game upon arrival. And then the next day they had another game, and McLellan went right back to Cam Talbot. And Talbot just never got a break. And, it wasn't until maybe March, I thought, that Talbot started to play something resembling as well as he played the previous year. And that was far, far too late to be of any real service.
So I like the idea of this bet, but I don't like the bet on Koskinen, the player. And so it's too early. Like, people say, how can you say that? You haven't seen him play. You haven't seen he could turn out this year. And yeah, I'm not talking about how he's going to play. He could well earn that amount of money, but I'm just talking about looking at statistics and looking at the market. I don't like the bet. The player, maybe he's going to turn out, maybe he's not. But when you compare him to other goalies, so the Oilers could have had Yarrow Halak or Carter Hutton if they had gone longer on term for about the same amount of money. And those are both proven NHL goalies. Hutton had a .931 save percentage last year. Halak had a .908. Anton Hudobin had a .913 save percentage. He signed for the same money on a 2-year deal as Koskinen. So there was actually proven NHL goalies.
Mm-hmm.
And just below that, at $1.5 million or $1.75 million in there was Chad Johnson, Robin Leonard, Peter Mrazek, Michael Hutchinson. And I guess my feeling is, Bruce, any one of those goalies, in terms of like who's what we know about goalies and how up and down there, could easily or as easily a good a bet next year to perform well as Koskinen. I think there's every good as chance as Peter Mrazek is going to have as good year as Koskinen. I think that's a really fair comment. So when I say I don't like the bet, it's because of that, because Mrazek only got $1.5 million and Koskinen got $2.5 million. So now again, we don't know. I don't know if Mrazek would have signed at Edmonton for $1.5 million. So some of the criticism of a GM, but Chiarelli leapt early. There was a huge market of available goaltenders, I would say, who are of similarly likelihood to perform well as Koskinen next year, based on statistical analysis at least. And Chiarelli paid a lot for one of them when he could have paid less for one of them. So there's also this goalie out of Russia, Bruce, one final, Pavel Francouz, who had a better save percentage than Koskinen in the KHL, I think on a weaker team. And he signed for $690,000 on a 1-year deal. So
very next
day. So people were mad about that at the time, and I was kind of, well, let's give Koskinen a chance. And I believe that. But on the other hand, I think that that assessment was correct, that this wasn't a great bet compared to other bets that could have been made.
Yeah, well, Francouz, he had a .937 save percentage and a 1.57 goals against average with SKA St. Petersburg, and basically repeated both numbers in the playoffs as well. 15 games.
Is that Francouz? He didn't play for St. Petersburg.
I'm sorry. This is Koskinen. I got the wrong page. I had Francouz up first. There we go. And then let's compare. He was 946 with Tractor Chelyabinsk and 949 in the playoffs. I mean, those are otherworldly numbers. And the thing about the Russian league is that the goalie save percentages are sky high. So just because your guy Koskinen is our guy Koskinen is 937, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily that exceptional. And I mean, they're paying him basically 4 times as much as Colorado paid for Francouz. And for what? I mean, he's got I mean, to Koskinen's credit, he does have 4 games of NHL experience with an 873 save percentage. So obviously he's proven.
Well, Bruce, he was in North America 1 year. So I actually hold that in his favor. I don't know if Francouz was or not in North America, but I hold that in Koskinen's favor. Like he's been here at least a year. Like that's important. Like he didn't kill it, obviously, but he's had that experience, right? So he's not going to be a total newbie in North America, and that can often, I think that's one of the factors that sometimes holds players back, is if the culture is too unfamiliar and difficult to adjust to. Let's move on, Bruce, to wing. Unless you have something to add there.
Oh, I'm just going to say 2 full years in North America for Koskinen, but just 4 games in the NHL. So
the Oilers, clearly another need was, and in January, February, this looked like the major need, looked like a scoring winger for Connor McDavid. And what was killing me at that time was people were saying, or like some insiders even, like, I think there was a suggestion, maybe we should move RNH to get that winger, get Mike Hoffman or something like that. And I was just thinking, are you serious? Like, you're going to move out Nugent Hopkins before he's been tried on the wing? So a major part of that problem was solved when McClellan finally played RNH with McDavid and found the correct winger to play on McDavid's left wing in RNH. And those two, I think, are going to be fantastic this year. And they were fantastic when they were together already. So it stopped being the top priority to much less of one, but still they needed to find a winger or two to play with McDavid and Draisaitl. I think that's fair to say. And Bruce, I just think they hit a home run here. In terms of the bet they made, again, we don't know how Tobias Reeder is going to do. But in terms of the bet the Oilers have made on this player, I just think it's a real home run. And I think that's fairly widely accepted by most people who tweet and blog about hockey, that they got this young player with a huge amount of skill on a cheap 1-year contract at $2 million. And is he not an RFA at the end of that too, Bruce?
He is. Yeah, he'll still be 26 So the Oilers will have re-signing rights. I mean, if he has a great year, obviously they'll have to pay more for him, but that's a hurdle you're prepared to take on. I think I'd happily say, yeah, have a great year, and we'll see where we're at in next June, and either re-sign the guy or else he has trade value. In the meantime, you got him for 1 year at a fairly reasonable ticket of $2 million. No,
Our
he's not.
friend Jonathan Willis was on Oilers Now yesterday, and he said something I wasn't aware of, Reader, that he had played tough minutes on Martin Hansel's line in Arizona. So one of the really good things about Reader is he has that experience playing skilled players and has shown he can hold his own in that regard. Like, I thought he was a good, decent offensive player, but it looks like, I mean, I knew he killed penalties, but that was interesting to hear. What do you think about the player himself?
Oh, well, I was at the infamous Tobias Reader game, in which it was early in his rookie season in the NHL, and he came back to Edmonton, and he scored 2 shorthanded goals on one shift. I was sitting right behind the net that he scored him in with Paul Almeida, and we got to enjoy that experience where the Oilers were on the power play with a 1-0 lead, and by the time the power play ended, they were trailing 2-1, and they went on to get clobbered 5-2, and it was Toby Reader, first star. Toby Reader, the guy you guys traded for Cale Kessie, and the fallout was immediate and
so you're
tremendous,
totally
you can imagine. So it was kind of humorous in a dark humor kind of way. Now Toby Reader in his entire NHL career of over 300 games has 2 other shorthanded goals, but he stuck the knife in that night. But he can kill penalties. That's a huge part of this edition. And of the next guy I'm sure we're going to talk about is that they actually address the fact that they need penalty killing forwards, not just forwards and wingers, but they need guys to fill specific functions in special teams. That's a plus. He's a 4-year veteran. He scored between basically 20 to high 30s in points, so he's somewhat productive. He's not a.
You're talking about Brodziak now.
I'm talking right now about Toby Reader.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. This year he dropped to 25 points, but as you say, he got the tough minutes assignment in Arizona, and that means real tough minutes because that team is in tough generally. He's got, among other things, when you talk about getting a winger for McDavid or Draisaitl, I think this is a pretty clear case of them getting one for Draisaitl with their common nationality, their established friendship, and so on. There's a very good chance we're going to see those 2 guys playing together, at least at even strength.
Yeah, let's finish off without a discussion about what the lines might be. So I like the Reader Center. You liked it. Everyone liked it. It seems like a good bet. Brodziak, I also liked for a couple of reasons. Kyle Brodziak, he's 33 or 34. He's coming off a pretty good point scoring year, but he's usually around 10 to 20 points right now as a 4th line center. He's a PK guy. He's good at face-offs, and he's really cheap. It was $1.15 million per on a 2-year deal. A contract so good, like if he doesn't work out, you just send him to the minors, and there's hardly any pain, if any pain at all, by doing that. The other really good thing, Bruce, is that this frees up Jujhar Khaira to compete for a 3rd or 2nd line wing job on the wings, and I don't think. I didn't actually love Jujhar Khaira at center on the 4th line. It's a really hard job. Center is a hard thing to do. Most players can't handle it. The Oilers are so lucky they have McDavid and Draisaitl, I think. And now they've got Brodziak. Strome, can he handle center 2-way? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But Brodziak can, which frees up Khaira, who wasn't a great 4th line center, was kind of mediocre at best at that, and frees him up to play either the wing on the 4th line or on the 3rd line. So Chiarelli addressed his wing problem and a 4th line center, a bit of an issue there, I think, all at the same time. So that was really good work by the GM. Again, I think Reader and Brodziak signings are both home runs, like that, just perfect, like just what he should have been doing, and great to see.
Yeah, the price was right on Brodziak. I don't personally mind a 2-year deal. You talk about the AHL option. Well, in truth, his last AHL game was in the 2006-07 season when the Oilers, without their AHL farm team at that time, had to loan him out to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins.
You're still holding a grudge about that?
I'm still holding a grudge about that. I really think they torpedoed themselves when they shut down their farm team after the lost season. And anyway, for Brodziak, he played one season with Iowa Stars. He played one with Edmonton Roadrunners and Iowa Stars and Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. But despite that, maybe even because of the range of experience, when he came up to the NHL, he was an NHLer, and he stayed one for the last 11 seasons running. He's been a full-time NHLer, and I see no scenario where he goes to the AHL or gets waived.
I'm talking more like his second year, Bruce, not this year. But let's say he falls apart. Let's say, Mark Letestu was a decent player, not last year, but the year before. But this year, would the Oilers have been better off without him or have him in the AHL? Like if he was here, let's say Letestu had another year on his contract.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying with Brodziak. That's my
okay. Point. Anyway, I'm happy with the signing. I like Brodziak as a fan. I've kind of followed his career and been rooting for him all along. Local boy from St. Paul, I believe he is, and yes, sir, St. Paul, Alberta, and he is. It's unfortunate that the Oilers gave him away as they did in the summer of 2009 after 2 good NHL seasons, and missed the heart of his career. But I, for one, welcome the player back, and I do see him filling a number of needs on the team, not least of which is on the penalty kill. As I say, he and Toby Reeder are the 2 most heavily used penalty killers among Oilers forwards. I just checked over the last 3 seasons, and each of them averaged a minute 50 per game on the penalty kill. And the next Oiler was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins back at a minute and 29 seconds and on down from there. So they're obviously going to be not necessarily the first kill together, but they're both going to be on the unit as regular contributors.
Alrighty. The other major move, there's kind of 2 moves. There's drafting Evan Bouchard. There's a move the Oilers made in drafting Evan Bouchard with the 9th overall pick. And because that was the other identified need, was a puck-moving defenseman, preferably right shot. And there's a non-move in terms of filling that need, not trading that need or other needs, not trading away Oscar Klefbom, Milan Lucic, or some other, even RNH, any player. A lot of those players were coming off down years. It would have been trading low, and Chiarelli resisted that. He went with Evan Bouchard. Bouchard fell to the Oilers in the draft. He's since the 2005 draft, in terms of players, defensemen putting up points in Major Junior in their draft year. He's the 3rd highest scoring defenseman after Ryan Ellis and Anthony D'Angelo. So he's an offensive dynamo, obviously at the Major Junior level. Right. The only question now, like clearly Harold the consensus is that was a hell of a lucky thing for the Oilers and a great pick. The only issue is because he fills a need. He was the best player available. He fills a need. Everything worked out for the Oilers for once.
No kidding.
The only issue, Bruce, is the Oilers still have that need this year for a puck-moving defenseman. And there's this being Edmonton, there's every expectation he's going to be with the Oilers for some amount of time. Who knows how long? And there's the fear or the question, like, is it better for his development to go back to Major Junior, or is it better for him to play in the NHL? And I have to say, like, I'm like everyone else in Edmonton. Like, my expectations are sky high. Like when I hear about this player, see clips of him, see him play a little bit, instantly the Hall of Fame player Larry Murphy pops into my head. Craig Button also made the Larry Murphy comparison, by the way, saying that's the kind of that's the stylistically the kind of player we're looking at. But of course, it's an insane comparison. It's an outlandish comparison. Like, he's just, so many of these players never pan out. And so it's important for me, and I think all of our fans, to chill out with this player and have some reasonable expectations. What do you think are reasonable expectations for Bouchard this year, Bruce?
Well, I think he's going to get some sort of look, unless he shows early that he can handle defensively, and this is the real wild card: is how is he going to match up against NHL caliber forwards and stars attacking him directly. And this is where last year, when the Oilers brought up Ethan Bear, who's drafted 3 years ahead of Evan Bouchard, just to put him in chronological space. And Ethan Bear, with the puck on his stick, making breakout passes, manning the point on the power play, all those things, he was pretty good. When the other guys had the puck, trouble. And he got owned in his own zone quite a bit, and he racked up quite a significant minus. I think it was minus 11 in 18 games, and most of those minuses he was part of the problem on those goals. And it was just quickness of play recognition of who the danger man was. There's a few elements. Now, I haven't seen enough of Evan Bouchard, and honestly, you could watch 100 junior games and you still wouldn't know. How is that going to translate to a National Hockey League when the time comes? So I do think he'll get his baptism by fire. The Oilers, it's not their usual style to rush defenseman draft picks into the NHL. They've done it with forward after forward. But the last defenseman who made the leap straight from the draft to the NHL without looking back was Paul Coffey, 1980. Guy who's now coaching Evan Bouchard. And so another guy who did it sort of was Chris Joseph, who they got in the Paul Coffey trade in 1987, and he came in as a then 18-year-old defenseman and played some games, and he was way out of his element. You could see it right away. So we don't know what exactly we're going to be getting here with young Bouchard. Looking at Darnell Nurse as a comparable in his 19-year-old season, which this effectively is for Bouchard. He turns 19 on October 20th. Nurse got 2 NHL games, and he hung around for a while, and then they sent him back to junior, and that's one possible outcome. He could get the Draisaitl treatment, where he sticks around for a big chunk of the season, but they send him out before game 40, so they save a crude year of service for future contract purposes. But really, I mean, the onus is going to fall on the player. How well does he handle the transition, and can he help the team? I think he can help the power play. I really do. I think that's a strong possibility that he could prove to be the best option on the power play. But if you do put him in there, first question is, who do you take out of the 6 veteran defensemen that are on the depth chart ahead of him, or do you go with 70 and 11 forwards and try and spot him in? Like, there's a few different ways to handle it.
I'm assuming there could be an injury if let's say he's with the team for the 9 games,
right,
which is which is likely. I mean, the Oilers seem to go with that direction. That's a good point about defensemen, with Clefbaum and Nurse being the most recent example, both top pick.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, first round picks. An injury could happen easily in the preseason or the first 9 games, and that might be one of the factors that will see him playing more. So he might not have to take anyone's spot in the lineup if he's the 7th guy and the next best guy. So that's a real possibility. It's not unlikely at all, given how tough it is to play defense in the NHL and how banged up they get. So Bruce, I was trying to figure, okay, because I have these unreasonable expectations, the next Larry Murphy of Bouchard, I thought, okay, let's calm down and let's have a look at other players who really ripped it up as top scoring defensemen in their draft age year and see how they did in that first year. How many of them were in the NHL?
Okay.
So I looked at the 20 guys, and of those 20 guys, 5 of them, let me just go to my list here, 5 of them made it to the NHL that first year and ripped it up. So that includes, actually it's just 4 of them, 4 of the 20. So 1 in 5. So Cam Fowler, Aaron Ekblad, Drew Doughty, and maybe Seth Jones if you're stretching that, he was okay as a rookie. But Fowler, Ekblad, and Doughty were definitely strong NHL players in their rookie years, I think. And so some of these, the rare player has made it. Of course, Ekblad and Doughty and Jones were all taken right near the top of the draft. Fowler is the only guy taken in Bouchard's range who really made it that first year.
Right.
Far more likely, Bruce, were players like players who became like, let's say things work out for Bouchard and he becomes a good NHL player. It's likely to happen though after he's been another year in junior and then in the AHL. So Morgan Rielly went back to the WHL. Dougie Hamilton went back to the OHL. I think was it 1 or 2 years? Alex Pietrangelo went back to the OHL. 2 years for Hamilton in the OHL. Pietrangelo, 2 years in the OHL. Ivan Provorov went back to the WHL for a year. So these are all fantastic hockey players. If Evan Bouchard it becomes that good, that's a huge win for the Oilers. But they went back to junior that first year. And then there's a whole list, of course, of guys who are just kind of okay. And none of those guys, well, Dmitry Kulikov was in the NHL that first year. So was Zach Bogosian. They were promoted rapidly, but they never really became strong NHL players, I would argue. They're just kind of okay NHL. They're not what the teams were hoping, actually, when they drafted them. And then there's players like Bobby Sanguinetti, Calvin DeHaan's an okay NHLer, Cody Ceci, okay NHLer. They all were in the OHL for a number of years. Michael Del Zotto was in the OHL for a year and then got to the NHL, but he's just become an okay NHLer. So almost all of them head back to junior. That's the bottom line. And not all of them develop. About half of them develop into good players and half don't. And about five of them were maybe in the washout category. And 5 of them were kind of in the maybe okay category. So that's, I think, what a fair look at maybe the odds for Bouchard. It's not bad odds. Half of these guys became really good NHL players. So that's not bad odds at all. I'm encouraged by that. But I think we need to, again, chill out about this first year coming up and realize, like, he probably really does need to go back to junior hockey. That's probably where it's best for him. And that's probably where he should be. So that should be the expectation going into training camp.
Now, did you have Jake Chychrun on your list as well?
He was not a high enough scoring defenseman to make the list.
Oh, okay.
I just took the top 20 points per game guys, Chychrun, and would have been below that.
Right. Okay.
Below that level.
He came into the NHL at 18 and he scored 20 points
so he'd be like in the Seth Jones category, or he might be more in because Bogosian and Kulikov had 16 points in 68 games, and Bogosian had 19 points in 47 games as NHL rookies. So, it wasn't apparent where they were going to go. Like that they were, you might have thought still after that rookie year, they're going to be great, but maybe both of them might have been better off in junior. Like, this is not an easy thing to do. I just think, and I'm not arguing what's necessarily that it's best for Bouchard's development to be sent back to the Ontario Hockey League. But, someone who I put a little bit of weight, Sean Patrick Ryan, the Oil Knight, is in London. He's seen this player play dozens and dozens and dozens of times.
Right.
And he's assessed him. He looked at his skill. He knows the London program. And his take is, he's a huge, he's a positive Oiler fan. He's not looking to criticize the team in any way. That's not his fallback position. His is just like, send this guy back to junior. That's where he really needs to be. It's a great program in London. He can work on his skating and some other issues. Or I don't know, skating. Some people.
Well, you have to work on your skating no matter what.
Yeah, that's right. He'll just be that much more polished. He just think his defensive game will be that much better. He thinks Bouchard really needs that. So, in terms of like an expert opinion,
he just wants to watch him in London for another year.
Oh, you nailed it.
If he played on another team, he wouldn't be saying that. But because he's a Knight, he wants another powerhouse in London. You
burned the Oil Knight. Singed. There's smoke coming off your keyboard or off your mic.
Yeah, well, they went out and they acquired Adam Boquist, eh?
Yeah.
So London. So technically, they have the rights to the numbers 8 and 10 overall picks this year. Both of them right shooting offensive demons on the back end. So it'd be something to see if they were both on the same team, how that would work out. But
are major junior teams allowed to pay players extra to come?
Allowed?
Is that like, and I'm not alleging anything here.
No.
Is it allowed? I don't think it is allowed, is it?
Well, they got a stipend, but I think there's supposed to be limits on it. And I think there's some stretching that gets done that isn't really visible to the naked eye. But I have never really delved into it, but I've seen, I've heard tell that there are sweeteners sometimes.
Bruce, what do you think about the move that Chiarelli didn't make? The move not to make a trade. Obviously I think he might have wanted to trade Lucic. Maybe Lucic wanted out, but you couldn't do that. And I'm just, in the end, although I don't think it's a great odds Lucic is going to bounce back and be a 60-point guy, even playing with McDavid in the first power play unit, I think that's a stretch. I really do think he's a third-line NHL player at this point. I'm still glad, in a way, like they didn't, like if the deal was that they were going to have to take this huge poison pill, why do it? Lucic is a useful NHL player. He's a valuable member of the team. If everyone can get their head around him as a third liner, and then trading Clefbaum, the more I thought about it, I just thought, geez, that's a really bad idea. Like, what if Sekera doesn't come back and can't play? Then who's your top left? Who's in the top four? You're with Nurse and who? Well, you're going to move Russell over. Then who's on your right? Like, it's a mess for next year without Clefbaum, and he was so fantastic in the 2017 playoffs. Like, why would you trade him for a lower value than that? And I know when a player's value is high, no one ever wants to move him. So maybe people are always trading low on players in the NHL. Maybe that's the nature of the NHL beast, the way the CBA is rigged. But I'm just glad he's back.
You trade him at the low end but you consider his trade value as the ultimate peak of that guy and expect full value in return. That seems to be the situation. I'm not unhappy they kept Oscar Klefbom. Let's put it that way. And he's the book is yet to be written on this guy. He's a little inconsistent, but last year, as in some prior years, there were some physical issues, and that's the bigger question: is this guy ever going to become reliably healthy? He had the one season where he played the whole way and was good. And other years he's run into a variety of things, and it'd be nice to see him put that behind him somehow and put together, another season where he's not hampered. I mean, last year he had to come out of the lineup 3 different times, and there were stories all through the first half that he was only there because Sekera wasn't available, and he was playing at less than 100%, and that was pretty apparent by eye. So I'm not unhappy they didn't trade him. I think with the acquisition of the Bouchard through the draft, that the imperative to get that offensive defenseman really went away. I mean, trading for Torrey Krug, for example, if you've got a guy that you think is, most people agree Bouchard's going to be at least an NHL caliber player, and power play point is a specialty of his. How far do you go to fill that gap for a year?
Did you just call him the Bouchard? Because I like that. If that becomes his nickname, the Bouchard, that would be a good thing. That would be a very good thing.
Well, so Bruce, it's Bouch, according to the Oilers yesterday.
Which, God, the Oilers are so underrated names. But I mean, they got to live with it in the dressing room. They want to keep it simple, I guess. They can't call I might have liked the Flying Fridge as Dustin Penner's nickname, but you, in the locker room, hey, the Flying Fridge, that probably didn't work so well.
No, probably not.
The one I hate the most is Pool Party. Like, whoever came up with that should be, I don't know. They should play hockey on a slough with very thin ice, is all I'm saying, Bruce.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Pool Party as a nickname myself.
Jeez. Okay, another thing I like about Chiarelli's summer is I think McLellan has a terrible proclivity to overplay veterans, and I'm worried that's going to happen with Lucic again this year. It happened last year, where he keeps putting these players in these prime positions to succeed, and they're failing and failing and failing. They don't succeed, and they're taking up ice time and opportunity from younger players. And that was the situation with Korpikoski one year. It was a situation with Letestu and Lucic last year. So I'm glad. Like, a lot of people want them to bring Alice Hemsky and bring this veteran, bring that. I know, don't, because the coach might play that guy, Mike Camilleri kind of guy, washed up guy, instead of Puljujarvi or Yamamoto, or like the guys who are ready, and they need that opportunity, and they've got to be given a full opportunity, and the coach has got to have that pressure to use these guys in key spots because he has no other choice. He can't go to the veteran who's like, he can't put Mark Letestu on one of the top 6 lines because he's such a good soldier. Like, I don't want to see that again. And we're much less likely to see it again because there's just a bunch of young guys vying. And I include Ratty and Pontus Aberg in that young guy category. They're young enough where they could be Oilers for 5 years. They don't necessarily mean that they're stopgaps. And Reeder's the same deal. These guys could be Oilers for a while. So
they're 25 years old, and it's standard fare that anybody outside of a high first-round draft choice, often it takes them into their mid-20s before they really reach their true, somewhere near their true peak. And learning young players, you have to be patient. I mean, another example that unfortunately has gone away is Tyler Pitlick, that was a second-round pick, and we saw the development and the setbacks and so on, and he's emerged as now I'd say a pretty solid and reliable NHLer. And sometimes you got to grab these guys on the second chance, like Dallas did with Pitlick. Maybe one or two of these Aberg, Ratty, Reeder types is going to work out for the Oilers. They're just right in that sweet spot at 25 years of age where they should have the chance to be, real contributors.
At the same age that Kyler Yamamoto is now, Jordan Eberle had put up 44 points in the NHL in 67, 68 games, something like that. Kyler Yamamoto's at an age. Wingers can break in early. Like the defensive responsibility is a lot less, significantly less. It's a much less complicated position to play. And wingers can break in and have some success at an earlier age than center or defense. So I want to see Yamamoto have that chance, honestly. And I'm glad he's competing against Ratty. So maybe Yamamoto makes the top line, or maybe it's Ratty, and then Ratty's bumped down to the third line. That's okay too. They've got Aberg and Ratty to battle for that job. The lines I would like to see are RNH McDavid, obviously, with either Ratty and Yamamoto competing for that job. And then I'd love to see Reeder, Draisaitl, and Jesse Puljujarvi. I just think that line will have – that's an attacking line. That could be a dangerous attacking line. And I don't want to see Milan Lucic, who's earned his way onto the third line. He needs to earn his way up at this point. Puljujarvi was a better player than Milan Lucic last year. He was a better two-way hockey player. So he has earned it. He has earned second line. He has earned it more than Milan Lucic. So plus he has way more potential to be to keep growing, to be a better player, and to take a huge step this year. So why I don't want to see Lucic and Reeder and Draisaitl. I want to see Reeder, Draisaitl, and Puljujarvi, and then however else the bottom lines will shake out as they will. But that's what I want to see in those top two lines. Let's end with your take on that, Bruce. What would you like to see?
Well, I think what we're going to see, you talk about the coach's reliance on veterans. I think you're going to see him give Milan Lucic every chance to stay in the top 6. I mean, certainly they're paying him as a top 6 winger. He has a long back history of being a producer in that scenario. So, I mean, the onus clearly is on Lucic to come in and raise his game several levels above where it was last year, because he really was dreadful. And as the season wore on, completely lost his confidence with the puck. But if he comes in and imposes himself on the games and on the team, he will be in the top 6. I mean, that's his case to make, and I think McLellan will give him some rope. But I don't disagree with your take as to how it should wind out in the longer term. That Lucic's position is it's tenuous based on what we saw at the end of last year. So without that bounce back, yeah, absolutely third line, and he can be, I think, a solid third liner. But I mean, at that price tag, it hurts. But there's the one thing that people, and I think armchair GMs and so on, tend not to give enough rating to is the personal relationships. This is coaching is a human relations, right? You're an HR manager, among other things, and there is the power of personality and so on that gets gets little play, and maybe in the actual room it gets too much play, but it's a factor. And you got a
Lucic
proud
has a lot
veteran.
of power. He's got a lot of clout on that team, I believe, and keeping him happy seems to be a real priority. This is why I was saying that the right question isn't what Lucic wants from a hockey perspective. The right question from a hockey perspective is what does McDavid, Draisaitl, Puljujarvi need? But you're right. Like, I think because of Lucic's age, salary, force of personality, what he wants matters. And it evidently what McDavid and Draisaitl, we hear this from the insiders all the time. Like, there's lots of back and forth on these lines, and what the players, who they want to play with and don't want to play with, really has a huge factor in this. So these are the players have a lot of say in this. So it's good for you to point that out. And it's perhaps unrealistic of me and maybe other people just to go like the pure hockey, what are the best lines in the platonic sense, when real world considerations enter into that.
Yeah. And I mean, back to your point on veterans, if you've got Cam Talbot saying, well, I want to play every game, period. I want to start every game. I think I can handle it. At what point does the coach rein that back a little bit? It hasn't really happened the last 2 years, in that McLellan, in 90% of the games that Talbot was available to start, he started in each of the last 2 years. Now, whether the new guy is veteran enough at 30 years of age without the NHL experience to horn his way into that picture, Personally, I think it's necessary, and I think what's going on in net is a huge factor in what's in the Oilers' fortunes going forward.
So it's up to the coach to set expectations with the players heading into the season, and McLellan's got to be thinking hard about what am I going to say to Cam Talbot heading in. What is success for you and the team, and how do they come together this year? Same with Lucic, and set that parameter. It's obviously crucial, and they're all in the end rated on winning. So that's when does the coach have to think about this? When he starts doesn't make the playoffs 3 out of 4 years. Took a team that was widely expected to make the playoffs last year and failed to do so miserably. That's when he starts to think, okay, different approach might be a good idea. And he said he's going to look in the mirror. So I'm sure he's thinking hard about these things. He's obviously a very smart and charismatic individual. So Bruce, let's end. I said we were going to end off with that, but let's end off actually giving Chiarelli a mark. Grading Chiarelli. Let's give him a mark. And here's the parameters for this. It's like you're a teacher and you're not thinking about that student was a real dickhead a year ago, and I hated what he did a year ago. You're just thinking, okay, I got to set all that aside, and I'm just going to look from April to present day, the salary cap, even though it's all his fault, the salary cap that he had, the cap space he had, the options he had, that's what we're grading right now. Okay. Nothing else. We're not thinking about anything else. So I'll go first because I can see the wheels are turning there about what you're going to give him. And I will give him, so I think he hit let's say I'm going to rein in my rhetoric a little bit. Let's say he hit a solid triple with Reeder. Let's say he hit a double with Brodziak. Let's say he struck out in terms of the bet he made with Koskinen. And let's say he got a double by not making a trade, and let's say he got, this isn't really anything to do with them, but he didn't trade up to get Bouchard, but he got a double, or let's say that was a solid single with Evan Bouchard, like it was a move anyone expected to get that hit. So when you add that all up, Bruce, if this was a baseball game, I think you'd score two runs that inning, maybe 3. That's pretty good. So I'm going to give him a B. Well, for baseball, so maybe that analogy isn't perfect. So I'm going to end up, because I think that was actually a pretty good summary. 1 strikeout, but like these strikeouts are really big. Like 1 strikeout's almost like 3 strikeouts. It's like end of inning when you get a strikeout. So I'm going to give him a B. I was tempted to go B+. I'm going to give him a B but my analogy was imperfect. So even though they would score 2 runs in a baseball game, this isn't a baseball game. This is rating his summer. So a B.
Yeah, I'm about in the same place, and I'm going to add one more transaction that may pay dividends down the road. The Cooper Marody acquisition by trade, which happened, I think during the playoffs, or certainly was after the trade deadline. There was late.
Well, he played in the AHL. Marody.
Oh yeah, okay. Then it was during
outside of the strict parameters of this rating, Bruce.
outside of the parameters then. Okay, then I won't include it. It was after the trade deadline is what I remember about that deal. But anyway, it got done. The NHL acquisitions, I mean, the big question mark is Koskinen, and as mentioned, that's such a huge position. If that bet fails, it's a failed summer.
Yeah, it's weird, eh? That's how it works.
Yeah,
you can't strike out. And the bet, I'm saying the bet was close to a strikeout, but the player might not strike out. So
on the other hand, you could point to the Winnipeg Jets and say, well, last year their big acquisition was Steve Mason, and he struck out, and the team still struck gold because their other goalie got hot. So, I mean, it's such a complex equation.
Bruce Marody was traded to the Oilers on April 8th. So within the strict parameters of our grading system, you can take that into account.
Okay, yeah, it was right after the day after the season then.
But the AHL season extended on,
right?
For that's why he played in the AHL. So you can, and I agree. I think that was a really good trade. Doesn't change my mark though. I'm still.
Right. Well, B is B, and I think this summer, what we've seen out of Chiarelli is passing grade for sure. And
could you be more specific? Are you going to
B?
B.
B.
Okay.
B. Let it be.
B. Let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, Bruce.
Okay.
All right. Let's finish, Bruce, before I say anything else. Okay. Thanks,
Another
Bruce.
highly polished podcast from the Cult of Hockey. We're doing good with these, I think.
Yeah, it's good to be able to see you because I think I'm cutting you off less. Probably a little less. All right. Thanks for talking, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks for listening and watching, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.